Rain dripped quietly down the cafe window, tracing trembling lines over the fogged glass. Inside, a woman sat alone at the corner table, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of a napkin. Her name was Aisha, 28 years old, an artist who had stopped believing in miracles a long time ago. Her eyes were beautiful, dark, expressive, but heavy with stories untold, and the world never seemed to look beyond her body. She was the kind of woman who smiled softly at others, but hid her own pain behind every curve they mocked. That evening wasn't supposed to mean anything special. It was just another blind date her best friend had forced her into, just to get out of the house. She had agreed half-heartedly, certain it would end like all the others. Awkward smiles, polite rejection, then silence. But fate had other plans, and sitting opposite her that night would be a man who would change everything she thought she knew about love, worth, and beauty. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of true love, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Because this story might just remind you why hearts matter more than appearances. Aisha looked at her reflection in the teacup. She had taken extra care with her hair today, wearing a navy blue dress that she thought made her look less big, though she hated herself for thinking that way. Her heart thudded when the cafe door opened and a tall man stepped in, shaking rain from his black umbrella. He was sharply dressed in a simple gray suit, his presence calm but commanding, like someone used to being listened to. His name was Rayan, the kind of man who didn't need to introduce himself twice. Unknown to her, he was one of the youngest millionaires in the city, the CEO of a fast-growing tech company. But to him, titles were just noise. Tonight, he was simply Rayan, a man curious about a blind date his sister had arranged. When his eyes fell on Aisha, there was no flicker of disappointment, no quick glance away, no judgmental tightening of his jaw, only a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. That simple act disarmed her completely. Still, before she could stop herself, she muttered softly, almost apologetically, "No one marries a fat girl, sir." Her tone was defensive, a shield built from years of cruel laughter, rejection, and pity. Rayan's smile didn't falter. He leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the table, and said quietly but firmly, "Then let's prove them all wrong." Those 6 words shattered something inside her. Not her confidence, but her disbelief. As they talked, something strange happened. For the first time, Aisha wasn't trying to shrink herself into the smallest version of who she was. She spoke about her art, her late mother who used to tell her that beauty wasn't in mirrors but in moments of kindness. She laughed, freely, sincerely, and he listened, genuinely curious. The cafe lights glowed softly, catching the warmth in her eyes, and the rain outside felt like applause from the heavens. What Aisha didn't know was that Rayan had seen every kind of woman the world labeled perfect. He had attended business dinners surrounded by glamorous models and sophisticated executives, women who talked about money, travel, and designer brands. But none had ever spoken the way Aisha did, with raw honesty, with depth that silenced the noise around him. She wasn't performing for approval, she was simply being herself, and to Rayan, that was the most beautiful thing of all. Still, deep down, Aisha couldn't silence the voice of insecurity that had followed her all her life. Every compliment felt like charity. Every smile felt temporary. After the date, she told herself not to get attached, not to dream, because men like Rayan didn't fall for women like her. But life once again had its own quiet rebellion planned. Days turned into weeks. Rayan started visiting her art studio, a small sunlit space filled with canvases and unfinished dreams. He watched her paint, admired the emotion she poured into every stroke. He commissioned a portrait for his company lobby, insisting that she be the artist. Slowly, he began appearing not as a client, but as a constant, bringing her coffee, helping her carry supplies, listening when she doubted herself. Rumors began to spread. Whispers from jealous colleagues, from her so-called friends. Why would someone like him be with her? They sneered. She's not his type. One even told her to enjoy it while it lasts. Each word cut her deeply, like tiny knives reopening old wounds. She wanted to pull away before she got hurt. So one day, she did. She stopped answering his calls, told him she was too busy, and buried herself in work. Rayan, however, wasn't a man who gave up easily. He saw through her silence, through her fear. One evening, he showed up at her studio with 2 cups of chai and said quietly, "You keep running away from people who see your worth because you've spent too long believing you don't have any." Tears welled up in her eyes. "You don't understand," she whispered. "People look at me and see failure, laziness, someone unworthy of love." He set down the cups and stepped closer. "Then let me look at you until you see yourself the way I do, as someone strong, kind, and irreplaceable." For the first time, she didn't argue. She cried, not from sadness, but from release, from the years of carrying shame that wasn't hers to begin with. Their relationship didn't blossom overnight. It grew like sunlight after rain, slowly, tenderly, but persistently. They faced judgment together, cruel comments online when people discovered who Rayan was dating. Headlines called it the CEO and his plus-size girlfriend, as if her body was the only thing worth mentioning. But Rayan never once flinched. Instead, he doubled down, introducing her proudly at company events, holding her hand in front of everyone, even posting her art on his official pages. "Talent doesn't come in sizes," he once captioned under one of her paintings, and that post went viral overnight. But success, fame, and love come with challenges. Aisha's old insecurities occasionally resurfaced. Once, after reading a hateful comment, she broke down, convinced that she was holding him back, that he deserved someone more fitting. Rayan found her sitting by the window, trembling with silent tears. He knelt before her, looked her in the eyes and said, "They can talk about our differences all they want, but someday they'll talk about our love instead." That night, something inside her changed forever. She realized love wasn't about deserving. It was about accepting, growing, and believing. And she was ready to believe. Months later, at a charity art exhibition organized under her name, Colors of Courage, Aisha stood surrounded by her paintings. The event hall was filled with guests, cameras, and applause. When she took the stage, her voice quivered, but her heart was strong. She spoke not as a woman seeking approval, but as one who had found herself. "For years, I believed I wasn't enough," she said, looking into the crowd. "But love, real love, taught me that worth isn't measured by size, looks, or wealth. It's measured by how much light you give, even when the world tries to dim you." As the applause filled the room, Rayan walked up to the stage. In front of everyone, he got down on one knee, holding out a small velvet box. A collective gasp echoed through the hall. Aisha froze, tears instantly streaming down her cheeks. Rayan smiled, his voice steady, filled with warmth. "You once told me no one marries a fat girl. Let's prove them all wrong." The entire room erupted in applause, tears, and joy. Cameras flashed, but all Aisha saw was him, the man who had looked beyond everything the world said she wasn't, and saw everything she truly was. She whispered yes through her tears, her hands trembling as he slipped the ring on her finger. It wasn't just a proposal. It was a promise, a revolution against every cruel word she had ever endured. They got married 6 months later, a small, intimate ceremony by the sea. Aisha wore a simple ivory dress that hugged her like confidence reborn. The ocean breeze danced with her veil as she laughed freely, her joy uncontained. Guests whispered again, but this time the whispers were different. They weren't pity, they were admiration, because she was radiant, unashamed, and absolutely breathtaking. Years later, their love story became something of a legend. Aisha's art studio expanded into a foundation supporting young artists who struggled with self-esteem and body image. Rayan's company sponsored her projects, and together, they gave countless people hope that love doesn't follow the world's shallow rules. It rewrites them. And on their 5th wedding anniversary, during an interview, when asked what kept their love so strong, Rayan simply said, "Because she taught me that beauty is not something to be seen, it's something to be felt." Aisha smiled beside him, her hand resting gently over his, her eyes sparkling with gratitude and peace. If this story touched your heart, if you believe love should be about souls, not sizes, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Every story we share is a reminder that kindness still wins, and that no one is ever too much or not enough for real love. Before we end, tell us in the comments, what does true love mean to you? Because somewhere, someone like Aisha is still waiting to hear that they are enough, just as they are.